And now what you're talking about is like anticipating the questions or the, the hurdles that customers would have to make a purchase, and making it as clear as possible is really important for that conversion rate.
And people shoppers are finicky like that too. Like if they do get frustrated or especially agitated, not only will they bounce, but like I said, now they're not even ever going to come back. Whereas at least if they knew up front and they're kind of like, they might be more inclined to come back later and say like, okay, maybe I will pay the $10. I really want this item,
Right.
So, yeah.
Which all like, we were saying before with some of the things you guys were talking about, like about having like as few clicks as possible. And now what you're talking about is like anticipating the questions or the, the hurdles that customers would have to make a purchase. So anticipating all of those things and making it as clear as possible is really important for that conversion rate.
Yes, exactly.
and you could have more than one payout option. You can load them simultaneously. Some people think they can only load Sizzle or only load Afterpay. You can actually run them at the same time, and they will be available at checkout, ShopPay, Klarna. You can have all those options and hit all those markets without doing yourself in and not offering the payment. Obviously, they all have their own little bit and their little chunk that they take, and it's up to you if you're willing to do the little payment fees and the percentages that they charge. But you can load more than multiple payment methods at checkout.
Yeah. So if someone was just getting started with their site, like their Shopify or Comment Sold site as a new boutique owner, like which, I know it's all important, but like, how would you like prioritize and like tell somebody like these are like the most important things to make sure that you address like right now when your site is live, and then get to this next week and this next month or whatever as you're building, or somebody who's just an existing boutique owner and hasn't really thought about optimizing their site for conversion rate? What are like the priorities of things you would tell them to look at?
I think the first, just upon immediately, my first instinct, the three things that I would say to focus on first are quality product photos, quality product descriptions, again, that are just giving the user the information that they need, and then your menu organization and just product organization in general. Because if you have a very small catalog, or a very large catalog, in either scenario, you want to be really thoughtful about how you organize. If you have a really small catalog, do not do crazy subcategories up the wazoo and filters. Like, don't even have filters. If when people click a filter, nothing's going to show, or one item. That's like, it's going to be a headache for the user. So you want to be more broad if you have a really small catalog, whereas you don't want to follow those directions if you have a really large catalog. That's when you do want all of the filters. Well, still don't go overboard. Like, there's something to be said for laundry lists of tags or collection, names, or like just too many filters where it's busy. But have the filters, have the subcategories, use the mega menus within the theme, which is just a really, it's a more aesthetically pleasing way to show like not only a category and not only a subcategory, but a subcategory basically. And so the larger your catalog is, the more in depth you want to get with how you're organizing everything.
If someone's organizing their collections and everything, it's like you're saying, is what I know we have a recommendation for how many products at least should be in a collection, like X many or more, to have it be its own collection.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation, and this is it's still a very low number, but I mean, at least 10 to 15 items for sure. And even that is low. Now, you're going to have every once in a while a unique category. I mean, like shoes, for example, even if you only have 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, it does need its own collection. It does, because it doesn't fit sometimes you can make something like kind of fit into something else, but if you're really like, a shoe is not an accessory, period. Like there's nobody who would ever go to a site thinking they want a shoe and click accessories to find it. So you want to just be mindful of that. And there might be some times where you do have to have a collection that has only a few items, but that should be a rare occasion. Also with collections, like you don't want outdated. So like for seasonal, for example, like 4th of July, just, I don't know why that's the first holiday that came to my mind, but have your tees and whatever other goodies you have for 4th of July, right, in a 4th of July collection. The minute 4th of July is over, take that off and just don't even like, don't try to mark them down. Like, it's just not even worth it. Save those items and try to sell them again next year. For holidays, that's, well, and this has nothing to do with conversion rate. That's just a selling tip. So I told you I was going to get into some rabbit holes up in here.
You know, what's interesting though, is that, so our last video series that we did was all about Shopify for beginners. And one of the things that we talked about was like, what are the most important, like priority things for getting a new Shopify site set up? And I'm pretty certain that you said the same thing. Yep. Good product photos, product descriptions, and making sure that your menu and collections are organized.
I think the only other thing I would add to that is your shipping returns page, and having that process. Because I think a lot of new boutique owners, especially, they just don't even think about the return. Like they don't have a return policy. They don't think about it until it comes up. And then you have to think about it on the fly. And then you have to, just have it right up front and center, get it done. It doesn't have to take you more than 5 minutes even to just come up with something basic. You can always build upon it later. But yeah, that's the other thing that I would throw in there.
What about you, Karla?
It always comes down to the basics, like Angela said. So I agree with everything she said right now. And I would then also just add that making sure that your checkout buttons and your add to cart buttons is above your product description and not below them. And having that search bar available to search your products.
Yeah.
I think those are, just to add to Angela's list, the items that I find most important that should be done up front instead of postponed.
Can I add something in too?
Oh, yeah.
From a marketing perspective, I would say something that's good to think about when you're, like we were saying earlier, about going on and like doing it as your customer to see, what that customer journey is actually like, and to think about like, when you buy something, any of us buy something, there's always an emotional component to it, right? And like, how do you want your customers to feel when they're on your site and going through the process? And like, think about that as you're doing things and making sure that, really good emotional experience that you want your people to be having is what is actually happening with your website.
Yeah. And I think to get there, it's like you said, the anticipating their needs or their hurdles or questions or concerns and addressing them, before they even have the chance to go there themselves.
Yeah.
And then also, oh gosh, it was just I just had it. Let's see, you were saying
emotion.
Oh yeah. Okay. So the other thing is in just the littlest bits of copy, like what can you do? So, because when you go to like in Shopify particularly, if you go to your theme, you can actually hit the drop down and choose to edit your theme language. When you go in there, there's lots of cool little nooks and crannies where you can, change, like the add to cart button doesn't have to say add to cart. It can be something more fun than that. Now you want to be careful that you don't change it to something that's confusing for them. Like it still needs to be really straightforward, but it doesn't mean you can't add a little personality, which just makes it fun. I mean, what if you could literally get them to laugh as they're checking out with you? I mean, like do it,
like you were saying with the announcement bar that you had, whatever, the free shipping plus your lucky day, like that just makes you smile when you read something like that. And you want people to have that response.
Instead of it just saying free shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or like I've seen a lot of people say like, I love paying for shipping, said no one ever. That's why we don't charge for it. Something like that. That one's a little long, but to that extent, to that sentiment, I should say, I mean, yes. But yeah, so there's lots of little places that you can update the copy, even when you're trying to ask for their email address. like sign up. Who the hell wants to sign up for anything? Like, snag my code, or, yes, I'm in, or, things like that, that just make it a little bit more of an experience.
Yeah. And if you're, looking at your analytics on a regular basis and making some of those like small changes, and then you can see, okay, I made that change on that button or on the announcement bar. Like, am I seeing the results from that? Yes, fantastic. Or no, let's try something else and switch it up. But that's why looking at those analytics on a regular basis, like you guys were saying, is important. So as you're making those small changes, you can see how it's actually affecting your conversion rate.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good to bring up too, because I think that that's a really common misconception as well, is that like, you have to go big and do this. Because obviously, like, we run our business on revamping websites, right? And that's like going big, and that's great. But first of all, there's two things to know. One, your job is not done there. Okay, that's the big revamp, but now it's continuing to optimize over time. Really, your website should never be done. The work in progress. So it's continuing to make those small changes, but also, for you to know that it doesn't always take this big, huge revamp. Depending on where you are in business and where your website is at, you might be at that point where now it's about those small changes and doing them one at a time, as much as you can from there. Because if you change 5 small things and you notice your conversion rate increase within the next 2 weeks because you have enough traffic, right, which of those 5 things made the difference? Because some of them could have actually been a deterrent and you didn't realize it, and some, because there's some changes. For example, we get asked a lot about like upsells. So when when your customer, there are a lot of different apps and they all behave differently, but when your customer is checking out, it could, before they actually, complete their purchase, pop up with a recommendation. But that may or may not work in the way that you want it to. And that's why, like, especially something like that is worth doing on its own and testing and seeing what happens. Because for some people that may come up and they may be so bothered by it that they were literally going to check out. They really were going to, and now they're leaving. Or it could work and they could add the item and still check out, or they could not add the item but still check out. So I mean, like, you want to, even like adding a terms and conditions box. I see this come up all the time in different boutique groups I'm in, where somebody posts about it and 15 people are like, I want that, I want that, I want that. I'm against it. I am thoroughly against it. In almost every scenario, because it is one more thing they have to do before they can even move on. And, now I'm not against, like, you want to be transparent with your policies. And that's why I was saying, like, have your shipping and returns information in a description tab right on your product page. Like, make it so that you know that your booty is still covered because you did whatever you could to make sure they have the information, but don't like force them to, click a box just to get to the next step. Or at least if you do add that, check on how that actually affects your conversion rate. And, if it makes a big enough, the argument of why you might want that is if you're having a lot of issues with returns and people not understanding your return policies, things like that. Okay. But you have to look at, if you add that box and then your conversion rate actually goes down, because that's the only change you've made and you've tracked it for a little bit and you're sure that you're pretty sure that that's the problem. The loss in sales versus the headaches with returns, which one, and make a decision that way. But just every little thing that you do to your website can have an impact. So positive or negative. And that's why if you do 5 things at once, you won't know which one's hurt and which one's harm. So. Yeah.
And like you said, it's like your website is never done. There's no such thing as like a website that's done. Like it should always be optimizing and the next thing that you can do to optimize.
Yes.
It's like a not like a Frankenstein, but It's a machine that you're always adding on gears and things. And then the things that don't work, you take them out. So
Yes.
And during the process, your ideal customer might even change. So making sure you adapt with your ideal customer throughout the growth of your business. You might start off thinking, I'm going to be targeting moms in their 30s in Texas, and then it ends up being you actually doing 40 to 50-year-olds in Minnesota or something. It's just adapt with your customers as well, making those tiny little tweaks.
And then I think also you kind of hinted at this a little bit, Angela, is that it's not happening in a vacuum, right? It's also your marketing, and whether it's paid or organic, whatever you're doing on social media and this and that, and the traffic that you're driving, like it's all working in conjunction with each other. So when you're thinking about conversion rate, just remember it's not happening in a vacuum either. So let's wrap up. Is there any last thoughts that you have? We'll start with you, Karla, about things that people should think about with conversion rate optimization.
I think we've gotten in pretty deep on this. Great questions, yeah. And I think just what you mentioned last is that it doesn't happen on its own, and you need to take time to evolve and make changes slowly.
Need more? Check out the blog at hotmessblog.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel too. Cheers!